Hi everyone, it's 2 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. But while people start logging in and joining, I'm just going to go through some basic stuff. But look, thank you all for coming along today. Really appreciate you giving up some of your time today to come along and listen to me talk a bit and hear some other people talk today about things they're doing. And yeah, thanks for coming along. Before we get started, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're all on today and the continuous connection to land and sea. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Before going any further, just putting this disclaimer here, the conflict of interest. For those of you that don't know me, I do work for Ocean Protect, a company that supplies and maintains WSUD assets. So there is that conflict of interest around maintenance and improving it. However, I've done to the best of my ability to manage that conflict of interest. And if anyone wants to question or talk about that later, I'm happy to do that. But I also just want to state that there are other people on this call that will have their own conflicts of interest as well. And we'll just encourage you all to state what organization you're from, just so that people know who you are and where you come from. The agenda for today, just going to do about 5 minutes meeting logistics and then let Dr. Paul Hackney from Parramatta Council do a little bit of an update from something that he's found out recently. This will be followed by a small update from me about Black Density Council's WSUD Compliance Program. They were unfortunately able to come along today. So I've got a few bits of information for them, but they'll be coming along to the April meeting and presenting an update on their compliance program and the success of that. And then I'll be doing a bit of an update about the framework, letting people know what's been happening, what hasn't been happening, opening up for a bit of a discussion and Q&A in case anyone has anything they want to talk about or ask about what I've said or something they've been thinking about or doing. That will then be followed up with a meeting wrap up. And then if people want to stick around and have a chat, then I'm happy to stick on for another half hour or so. I think this is probably going to go much shorter than an hour, but yeah, thanks everyone for coming along. Now, in terms of just some logistics, if you can please keep yourself on mute when not speaking, that would be helpful just to avoid any weird background noises, which can happen at times. If you can also just raise your hand virtually if you have something you do want to say. That just and wait for me to call upon you to speak. And when you do speak, if you can just say where you work from, just so that people have that idea of what organization you're coming from to help kind of manage those conflicts of interest and just be respectful of everyone's opinions, ideas, and time. We're doing some discussions and talks and thinking about things that are a bit out of the box at times. So sometimes there might be some weird opinions, some strange ideas, but those are important to be had. So please feel free to say what you need to say, but also just be respectful of time. There is an agenda. I will be sticking to that to the best of my ability so that we can get out on time. And also, it's not the time to push and promote your products and anything like that. If that's something you do sell or offer, today is about WSUD maintenance compliance, but also WSUD compliance in general. And so today, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's been attending and participating in these network meetings. Really appreciate all the different organizations that have been coming along, from state government to local government, consultants to nonprofits to catchment groups and a whole bunch of others. Thank you for coming along and welcome to any of the new people that have come along today. For those of you that are new, National WSUD Compliance Network is a group that's meeting regularly to discuss WSUD compliance, but also looking at holding the development of the framework accountable and making it transparent. And that's why I provide an update every meeting, but then also to provide an opportunity for feedback so that the industry can help shape this framework. With that framework, the WSUD Maintenance Compliance Framework being a free package of information, resources, and tools for councils to improve the implementation and management of WSUD assets within the jurisdiction. And so if people do need to leave early or are interested in getting in contact or looking at the framework, you can email me, you can call me, you can go to wsudcompliance.com.au. On that website, the recording and slides from today will be there. You can also stay up to date with the LinkedIn page with that little QR code on the left. Alternatively, you can access the framework right now with that giant QR code on the right. But basically, everything is recorded and will be made available, and feel free to reach out after today if you have to leave early. And so I'm going to call upon Paul to kind of turn on his microphone and camera if he is here. I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm
Oh, yes,
here.
he's here. Cool. But yeah, so Paul approached me yesterday with some news that he's come across for New South Wales councils, and I thought I'd give him a little platform to share what he's found. He does have some slides if you want to try share your screen. If not, I do have them on my computer as well.
Yeah, can you do it off your computer? Right,
Yeah,
let me
that's fine.
know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so can people see the slides? No.
Not
Let me
yet.
stop sharing. Let me share my screen again. Uh, screen one, two. So share. Yep.
Yes. There we go. I can see that. Yeah, very, very short observation more than anything else. Largely most directly relevant to New South Wales councils, but what we're doing here in New South Wales may be relevant for other jurisdictions as well. So yeah, just go to the next slide, please, Daniel. Yeah, so last month the New South Wales government released new shelter in place guidelines for flash flooding. So just for those that don't know, shelter in place is for where rather than trying to during a flood to leave the building and move to the beyond the floodplain for safety. That's the preferred position of the New South Wales SES. In some cases, it may be safer to stay put in the building in a suitable location. Now, the important thing for this particular group is that they recommend setting up an official register of locations in your council area that are using the shelter in place um, uh, methodology. Next slide, please. Now, this is important because the state government's never asked councils to set up such a register for private flood control management infrastructure, which is what shelter in place is. So all the councils in New South Wales need to decide, are you going to follow this recommendation and set up a register for those shelter in place? So, but what I'm suggesting is, yeah, okay, great. Set up a register for shelter in place, important. But why, if you're doing that for shelter in place, why not expand it to include other types of private flood infrastructure, such as on-site detention? And then if you're going that far, why not expand the register to include private water sensitive urban design infrastructure, such as water sensitive urban design? And as everybody on this call knows, there's a big problem in the private sector, private infrastructure. It just doesn't get maintained, or it's get concreted over, whatever. So the first step to ensuring this is all working is to know where it is. And then if you've got the register, then you go to item 3, which is you can do an inspection and enforcement regime for above. Because at the moment, for my council, for example, we mandate OSD, WSUD in our development assessments, but we don't. After it's been awarded, we don't know where they are, not in a corporate centralized location, and we don't go and inspect. So basically, this is an opportunity to jump onto what the state governments have said about shelter in place, and great, do that, but also consider it for water sensitive urban design. So I've pitched the idea at my council, and yeah, a little bit to my surprise, everyone said, yeah, set up the register, set it for OSD, set it for WSUD. So yeah, so far so good, but you know, this is only about 2 days ago, so it may fall at the wayside. But what I'm suggesting is to this group, if you're in this position, you may be able to use as a leverage to bring up the subject at your councils and get the register set up. That's absolutely critical that the council knows where these things are. And then you can hopefully move on to do more stuff about inspection and so forth. So that's it. That's the end of my pitch. It's a I just thought it was a useful idea, and other councils might be able to do the same. Even beyond New South Wales, you could say, "Oh, look at the New South Wales people; they're doing this." You could use it as a talking point, at least, to get started within your organisations. That's it.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Paul. And yeah, it is an interesting thing, and thanks for raising this as something for me to look into. Because yeah, one of the first steps for using the framework that I encourage people to do is just try and set up some sort of register, some sort of list of where all these assets are, even if you're not going down the route of getting to 3 on this slide where you're actually doing inspections and enforcement. It just provides that opportunity that at some point, hopefully, you at least know where these assets are so you can plan more better. You can plan
Mhm.
better. But then also in terms of just understanding maybe in 10, 20 years, you might have the capacity, the resources, and rather than doing all of the hard work then of trying to find out where these properties and assets are, you can start now, just start collecting that information, and then that makes it a bit easier later on. So if people, yeah, so that was kind of the relevance to the framework, and thanks for that, Paul. And I'm just curious if anyone has any questions for Paul about what he just talked about. Otherwise, we can maybe move on, but just wanted to see if anyone has anything they want to say. No? Cool.
Okay, good.
Well, thanks for that, Paul. Really appreciate you talking and highlighting this for all of us. I'm sure a lot of us will be interested to see how this goes at Parramatta, but if any other councils also follow through with something like this, that'd be good.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, bye, bye, bye.
Um, so, oops. So going back to this, and so as I said before, Blacktown City Council unfortunately weren't able to make it to today to do a presentation about their compliance program and the update on that. They will be coming along to the April meeting where they'll provide a bigger update about it. But I had a meeting with them recently, and it was really interesting just to kind of hear how it's progressed and what's been happening since I left the program in 2022, at the end of 2022. But and so look, I'm not going to go into this too much because I think I'll leave it for them to talk to at the next meeting. But something that I thought was really interesting from the conversation with them was how that they have found that being kind of proactive, reminding people that reports are due, has led to better compliance. So people are sending so the team are sending letters to remind people that reports are due. Sometimes those reports still aren't submitted, so they'll send another reminder after the due date, and then that normally leads to a lot of reports. And I believe they said the compliance rate was about 80 something percent, which I think is a pretty good rate considering it being in the private space and all of the different people within that space that might not be aware of this stuff or not familiar with it. But it really kind of reminds me of how important it is that these compliance programs don't have to be super sophisticated, super like expensive and energy and capacity intensive. If you set up some very simple automatic systems at the front end of this program, it can really reduce that kind of, I guess, burden that councils would feel in terms of trying to implement a compliance program. Blacktown City Council has compliance officers, but there are ways to set up a compliance program different to Blacktown, but still get similar outcomes. Yeah, I'll leave that till the next network meeting. But going into the framework update from me, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm the project lead for the framework and the WSUD specialist at Ocean Protect, with my primary role really looking at developing and helping the councils across Australia with implementing this kind of framework to improve maintenance in their LGAs. So what's happened today? So nearly 70 councils have accessed the framework, which for me is a pretty good number to see. So pretty happy with that. Uh, and then there's a whole bunch of other organizations out there, and some of you are on this call today that have accessed it and looked at it and provided feedback and input. And some of that was during the consultation period that happened last year, which went for a 4-month period. Over 500 people were involved in that period. So it's not just I'm leading this thing. There's a lot of people involved in helping shape and develop this project. And this National WSUD Compliance Network have seen over 300 people show interest, so register, watching it, all of that. So that's been really good to see such a large interest from the industry in this. And then we also do have in principle support for the framework from 7 organizations in the industry. And so that's also been really helpful with those organisations. If you're not familiar with them, there's the two associations, Stormwater New South Wales and Stormwater Queensland. So they've provided in-principle support. I have also co-hosted workshops with them last year about the framework. And so they've provided a lot of support and help, which has been good. But then there are another 5 organisations that have been a bit more in the background, but still providing support and encouragement for the industry to get behind this, with them being Cooks River Alliance, Frank Sydney, Stormwater 2030, Outland Stormwater, and Optimal Stormwater. So it's great to kind of see this. You don't have to be dedicating time, money, capacity towards developing the framework. It really is just putting your name behind it, being like, yes, we're happy with this framework. We support it. We think it's a good idea. And if anyone on here is interested in talking about that later, I'm happy to have that conversation about how we could do that with your organization. Then last year, there was a 4-month consultation period, which I have talked about in the previous meeting, so I won't focus on this too much. But the idea, again, really was to provide everyone an opportunity. I then reviewed all of that feedback and presented that to the group in the October network meeting. And then, presented a whole bunch of things, reviewed it in an October meeting. I shared the kind of summary of that. And then since then, unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of time. I've had to, unfortunately, step into an additional role. So I'm doing 2 roles at Ocean Protect at the moment. So I haven't been able to dedicate as much time and capacity to furthering the framework as I would have liked since October. My hope was that I would kind of have something updated by April so that I could share this at the next meeting and move on to the next stage. However, yeah, with a lot of dedication to a bunch of other things happening at work, haven't been able to do a lot. I have been having conversations with people. I have been reviewing the feedback and all of that, but I haven't really been able to action upon it. And so just wanted to be completely honest, that is the case. However, one, I guess, exciting thing that's been happening is I've been in discussion with a organisation about trying to get a pilot happening of the framework with a Sydney-based council. I don't believe the person is here that I've been talking to, so I'm not going to go into that too much until that's kind of finalised. But at the moment, I am in talks, getting close to, I think, finishing an agreement to pilot the framework with a council, where I'll kind of work with them to help use the framework and help improve their processes. So that's exciting and something that's happened since my last meeting. Since the last meeting we had, then try and work on some of these updates and then provide an update at the next meeting, which will be on April 30th, and then try and finish those updates so that I can try and release a new version of the framework by the end of this financial year, sometime in June, or potentially, depending on how the next few months go with my roles at Ocean Protect, maybe I might need to push that to August. But overall, this is still very, I guess, slowly progressing, but there are some exciting steps happening. I'm keen to get this pilot happening and working with that council and with those people involved to get this in place to actually show that this framework can be beneficial. Because yeah, it's great for me to come here and be like, yeah, this is what you need. However, yeah, the pilot will really be beneficial and help develop a case study of how to use the framework. But yeah, that's kind of my update. It is shorter than I hoped for this meeting, but that's the reality of my job right now at Ocean Protect. So I'd be just curious to see if anyone has any questions about anything I've said, anything I'm doing, what I'm about to do, or maybe some questions based off what you're doing in your roles and your councils or organizations. But yeah, if anyone has anything they want to say, you can raise your hand and happy to unmute and we can have a chat. I'll just give it a moment to see if anyone has anything.
Hey, Danielle, can you hear me? Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand.
No, that's
I'm
all
on
good.
the phone.
Hi, Michal.
Hey, everyone. My question is on this new trial that you want to do with a new council. How do you guys integrate everything with the council systems and the asset management system and the automation of maintenance? Is it like an Excel spreadsheet like you showed us before, or is it a different management,
Yes.
IT management, software management?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and thanks for raising that. So I think the thing to highlight here is it's very early on stages. Hasn't been conversations about what those systems would look like. I would be aware that that council does have some sort of system, so I can't really comment on what system they have. My goal with that pilot would be to sit down with the relevant people and just play around with that Excel information management system to show them what I think it could look like, with the intention of them integrating the systems as much as possible, which is a conversation you and I have had chats about before. So yeah, I can't talk to that right now. I don't fully know what systems they use, but maybe that is something that can be talked about at a future network meeting with one of those people involved at that council. But yeah, I can't really talk too much about it because I don't know. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you very much.
No worries. Does anyone else have anything they want to say, or shall we keep moving? Cool. There will be opportunity to chat at the end if people want to talk about anything else as well. But look, just trying to wrap this meeting up to respect all of your times, but feel free to stick around after this wrap up. But yeah, so the next network meeting is going to be on April 30th. Giant QR code here. You can register via Zoom. Otherwise, you can go to wsudcompliance.com.au/network and you'll find the register button on there. But hopefully by then, we'll have Blacktown City Council providing an update on their program, which is exciting news, and some good feedback and input for the industry. And then hopefully I'll also kind of be able to present some sort of update on the framework by then. Hopefully I'll have made some more progression with that. Otherwise, yeah, just keen to have a chat more about the framework and other things that are happening in the industry. And so that is kind of the end of everything I have to say. Today is a lot shorter than I hoped for, but I appreciate all of you coming along today and having a chat. If you want to email me, call me, my details are there. You can go to wsudcompliance.com.au for more information. That the recordings and slides from today will be there. All past recordings are also there. You can connect with the framework on LinkedIn, where we will have updates provided on there. You're also still able to access the framework, the kind of consultation draft of it. And hopefully at some point there'll be the updated version. Thanks everyone for coming along. Happy to kind of stick around and have a chat. Yeah, thanks everyone. Hopefully see you at the next meeting. I do see a comment from Rudy. I'm not sure if Rudy wants to speak to that at all.
Yeah, happy to if you're there.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat.
Okay, so yeah, this was quite a long time ago, back in around 2001. I was working on the Stormwater Environment Improvement Program with Sydney
Yep.
Water, where we installed quite a number of GPTs. And at the time, there was not a lot of information on performance of GPTs and other devices.
Yep.
So within Sydney Water at the time, we developed a database,
Yep.
and the database was also linked to their capture data, so their pollution capture data. So for every device that Sydney Water owns, they actually have a very nice database with every inspection and every clean out, listing roughly the proportions of organic, non-organic, and all, and
Yep.
the weight of the pollutant that they'd captured. So out of that, we developed this algorithm to help design future GPTs, which was based on the catchment size, the catchment characteristics, the pollution load estimate, and the
Yep.
pollution capture data. And with that, we approached the Stormwater Industry Association at the time. I can't remember who was leading it. Steve, I think, might have been leading it at that time. But and offered to help basically set up a web interface for an industry database, so that every council could collect the same sort of capture data on their devices, and that way the industry would get some better insight into the performance of various devices
Yeah.
in various locations. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I did write a paper
Yeah.
rough on the subject and raised the idea of an industry tool to basically a design tool, but a design tool that was backed up with actual capture data. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I thought that it had merit at the time, um, but yeah, I'm not sure why there wasn't more support for that sort of concept. It seemed like a win-win for council.
Rudy,
Yeah.
Rudy, if I may, I can do you one better. As you know, I have actually reproduced the music model, and what you're saying sounds like something that should be integrated into the WSUD model. So basically, if you give me the algorithm, I can actually introduce it into an automatic book that is valid for your model. Actually have exactly all that information that you're talking about in your website. No problem. Sorted. Done.
Yeah, so I guess there's the missing link that this was trying to fill in was utilizing actual real capture data.
I
Uh,
understand.
so for example, the one thing that Sydney Water did quite well at the time, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they did it quite well at the time, was very strict regime of inspecting their devices and nominating how full their devices were. So that they had a really good time history. And what we did with this algorithm is we linked the time history of buildup of pollutant with rainfall data as well. Um,
Mm.
and
Yes, I understand this. I think you should probably have a chat with me because what you are saying, that can be extremely easy.
Mm. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Not
Yeah, I
a
feel
problem. Everything can be done.
Yeah, I feel like you two can probably have a chat outside of this meeting about that because I think, yeah, there would be things you both would benefit about that. I would just say there is something in the chat from Justine Barrett from CSIRO. Rudy just wondering whether you're able to attach the file so that they don't have to pay access to the document.
Oh,
Not
okay.
not sure
Yeah,
if
no worries.
that's possible. If you can't send it through right now, happy for you to send it to me and then I can distribute it if that's allowed, sort of thing. I'm not sure what the thing would be. Otherwise, I can get you in contact with Justine and maybe you can have a chat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I know I've got that document floating about on on my laptop somewhere, so yeah, I can forward it to you.
Yeah,
That'd be
cool.
great. Thank you.
Hi, Justine.
Hi. I've been running a stats model this week actually around litter amounts and what variables influence litter amounts. And so I'm curious to see what you've done, Rudy, and to see if I can incorporate it in what I'm doing. The more data we have, the better it gets. But I was just looking at data from Hobart, and yesterday we realised that the number of tourists in Hobart has a huge impact, and little things like that aren't incorporated into our models generally.
Yeah,
Be good
yeah.
to get
Well,
a
I
better
mean,
understanding.
a really interesting fact that came out of the Sydney water data was the benefit of the Do the Right Thing campaign.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So there was, as I said, it'd be worth. I don't know who is in the Sydney stormwater section anymore. Robin Sim was there when I was working for them, and Monica Bullfill.
Mm,
And they provided me their database of all of their capture data at the time.
Mm.
And it was, yeah, very interesting to see the capture, the loads reduce about 6 to 8 months after the Do the Right Thing campaign started.
Wow.
Uh,
You go.
yeah. So, their conclusion was that compared to the cost of installation of GPTs, that was much more, public education was much more effective tool.
Is that written in the paper that you wrote, Rudy?
I'm not sure. It might be. I mean, that was 2001. It may
yeah.
be. Um, But when I find it, have I got your email address somewhere or?
I can get you two in contact.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe get me in contact on that three-way too, please.
Yeah, great.
Just,
Okay.
what you're saying sounds interesting, and I would like to know. As you know,
Yeah, so
maybe you don't know, I've developed a climate change algorithms for news modeling, which
yeah,
is, I
at the
think,
time,
really awesome.
yeah, at the time the algorithm was pretty simple, and I'd since and it was based on the database. So it was basically for any location in Sydney, I could identify where I was, the size of the catchment, the land use of the catchment. Then it would sift through the database to find similar locations of existing devices, and then give me some statistics based on all of those devices on capture rates, loads based on and what was particularly interesting on systems where there was multiple GPTs, um, is finding the variation in capture when clearly one of the devices was full. And it's quite interesting that you could actually pick that data out of the database. So yeah, I think that sort of information.
So it's got something to do with latitude, longitude as well. So it's map-based information, I understand. And from what I
Yeah,
understand,
yeah, no,
and,
it did have some logic, and I was just about to say I did start to rewrite portions of it in Python, but I never got around to finishing it.
don't worry about it. We can sort that out. I think we all should maybe have a chat because there's a bunch of algorithms that I have that you apparently have, and there's a significant amount of infrastructure that I built around databases and maps. And modeling. So and climate change adjustment of ideas. So I think there's some ways to make this show going forward.
Yeah, and again, I guess for me the emphasis and the motivation was to try and get an industry standard way of recording the capture data from all of the GPTs that all of the councils held, which I think there was a really a missed opportunity in that not happening. This is now 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago. We could have had 20 years of data available to us, and I know some councils do have this data floating about, but yeah, it would be good at some stage to develop an industry tool that captures all of this data so that we can share and learn from it. Because I know there's a lot of councils that I've worked with that are really struggling to justify expenditure on maintenance on GPTs. Some of them aren't working very well at all, and I've even
I
known
think
that some
I think
councils
if
have
Daniel,
pulled them up.
yeah, I think if Daniel puts us together, I can
Yep.
show you certain things that I've already
I'll get you.
Yeah,
I'll get the
Yeah.
three of you in
entrance
contact.
into databases by council and all that. So there's significant work
Yeah.
that I think is going to
Oh,
be
good.
aligned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll get you in
cool.
contact. I see there's a raised hand from Russell, but thanks, Rudy, for raising that. That's an interesting thing to hear about. And I'll get you in
Yeah, no
contact. But
worries.
yeah, Russell
Oh, g'day.
from
Just a quick one, Daniel, to
yeah,
you. I noticed that Stormwater 2030 is
Yep.
in principle supporter. Any thoughts on how your framework or the framework you're doing sort of meshes in with that,
Yeah.
sort of work?
Yep. So I guess for context for everyone, Stormwater 2030 is kind of an initiative or like something that Stormwater New South Wales started. So Stormwater New South Wales have started a few things such as Frank Sydney, but also Stormwater 2030. And from my conversations with Andrew Thomas, who is involved with both, he yeah, thinks that there are opportunities to kind of overlap with Stormwater 2030. He, from my conversations with him, he's talked about kind of maybe it goes down a bit more of that political route of getting involved in more policy sort of stuff. And I think that becomes an opportunity for them to maybe help lobby a bit or get that interest from higher up in state government, federal government sort of thing. So at the moment, it is very early days for Stormwater 2030. So I can't probably really say too much about what they're doing, but there are potential opportunities to collaborate. But again, it's the idea of in principle support is any organization can just be like, yep, I think it's a good idea. They don't necessarily have to benefit from it. They don't have to contribute in any way. It's just that it's kind of like a petition is how I see kind of in principle support. It's just like, yep, I'll have my name associated with it. But yeah, it's probably something I will need to explore with them a bit more to understand maybe how the two can work together. But a potential opportunity is, yeah, Stormwater New South Wales, Stormwater 2030, kind of working with the framework in a way of maybe taking it control at some point rather than me at Ocean Protect having it. So that's also a potential opportunity, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. As far as I can tell, there's huge synergies and sort of potential overlaps and sort of the work you've done sort of could complement nicely Stormwater 2030.
Yeah, like my intention and Ocean Protect's intention is we're establishing this project and we want to hand it off to another industry body, Stormwater 2030. Maybe that could be it, Stormwater New South Wales, Stormwater Australia. There's a bunch of probably potential candidates, but for now, we'll spend a little bit more time establishing what I kind of want it to look like with everyone's input and feedback, and then with that long-term goal of, yeah, handing it over to someone like them.
No, cool. Thanks.
Cool. No worries.
Hey Daniel, it's Fotis here from Ocean Protect.
Yep.
I was just wondering, is it possible to have a member of Sydney Water provide an update on that GPT inspection program, potentially at the next quarterly meeting that you're looking to hold, just to kind of see what the evolution is like over time? Because I think we got a really good history lesson just then as to how those programs came about. So it might be just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. And yeah, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like that would be an interesting thing to learn about. And I can try reach out to Sydney Water. I know a few people over there, so maybe I can find someone to speak at the next meeting or at a future meeting to present on kind of, yeah, what's happened or if anything's actually happened with that data from 20 years, over 20 years now. But yeah, thanks, Fotis, for that suggestion. Does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss before we call it a meeting? Just curious. No? Well, look, thanks everyone for coming along today. It was great to have some of those kind of final discussions at the end to, yeah, discuss the stuff that Sydney Water did and other things that people are doing at the moment. Really appreciate you all giving up some time today, coming along, getting involved. And hopefully for the next meeting, I'll have a bit of an update for all of you about kind of where things are with the framework. And yeah, thanks everyone, and hopefully see you at the next meeting.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right.